Now, this is where we get into who's really controlling what. Because presidents are selected, not elected. Because this is basically the blueprint to the Freemason infrastructure, right? So you have the Jesuit general, which is the Black Pope. The Black Pope is also known as the Archbishop of New York, right? That is the Pope who controls both parties, and he's also has his hands inside the Vatican, London, and Washington, D.C., that also controls the military, right? Which is why Donald Trump is the president, right? So Washington, D.C. controls the world's intelligence agencies, military, CIA, Mossad, and many different things of that nature, right? So the Black Pope, the Jesuit general, is also the highest general. He controls all Jesuits. He controls the White Pope, the Gray Pope. He controls the Order of Garda. He controls the Vatican Popes of Rome, the Cardinals. He pretty much controls that whole infrastructure that is applied to the secret societies of the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Malta, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Order of Sylvester. Then you got the Pilgrim Society, the Jason Society. Then you got the Rhodes Scholars. You got all these secret societies that's basically applied to the Committee of 300, right? That controls the round table of the Trilateral Connection, right? So one thing you got to understand is about the policies and the principles of the Knights of Malta. It's all based on a form of dictatorship. And the reason I say that is because when you read the policies and the principles of the Knights of Malta, right, it talks about how they want to end sovereignty for the United States and other countries. So this is also acclimated to the United Nations. Then you have the end of absolute property rights, the end of all uh, uh, artillery rights, the end of the new international economic order, which is a world government, which is why they're trying to basically make all world governments and world religions work in synergy. And then you have the redistribution of wealth and jobs, calls for nations to trust the United Nations. Then you have total disarmament. And then you have to promote the United Nations as a hope for peace, the promote for the UNESCO, the deadly educational and cultural arm of the United Nations, promote interdependence, support sanctions honoring the father, and then you have the support of the belief of the economic system, which is based on a principle of communism, which is what I was telling you about the universal based income. Then you have to promote the Pope as a acting go between the United States and the Soviet Union. So all this stuff is being applied because now I'm going to show you this video. Because remember, I was telling you, you cannot have a one world government until you have a totalitarian cybernetic dictatorship that's based on a technocracy. Technocracy is being controlled by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is being ran by Elon Musk. Elon Musk works in synergy with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to be the totalitarian dictator who brings in this energy, which is why he says what he says in this video.
We probably none of us will have a job. But in that benign scenario, there would be universal high income, not universal basic income, universal high income. There would be no shortage of goods or services. I think the benign scenario is the most likely scenario, probably, I don't know, 80% likely, if you ask, in my opinion. The question will not be lacking goods or services. Everyone will have access to as much in the way of goods and services as they would like. The question will really be one of meaning. If the computer can do and the robots can do everything better than you, then does your life have meaning?
So he said, does your life have meaning if artificial intelligence can basically do everything that you can do? Right? So this is why they want to have a universal based income. He tried to say a universal high income. That's all Marlicky, right? That's all technology. That's all semantics. He's giving you nothing but, pseudo edification. So one thing you got to understand is that Donald Trump is also a Knights of Templar, right? So he's also, when he's talking about draining the swamp, you can't drain the swamp if you are also a part of the swamp. Let's understand that mechanism in itself. Now, one thing you gotta understand is that Donald Trump's handler is Chancellor Syed Haba, right? who is basically the chancellor of the Order of Malta, which is the Knights of Malta, his handler. So his handler is also connected to the Orsini family, Pepe Orsini, the Great Pope, who is the true ruler of the world. He is the ancient Maximus of the clan of Rome. He remains behind the scenes, pulling the strings, literally every secret society and every human slave in this realm. You got to read about him. So these pictures that I'm going to be showing you are the ones who basically control the whole infrastructure of the political system. These are the people who pick the presidents, right? Because presidents are selected, not elected. You got McDonald, and then he is the chairman of the investment committee for the United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund, and co-chairman of the United Nations Association of the United States of America, UNA, USA. He is also the member of an influential Washington-based financial advisory body called the Group of 30, and has been the director of the Council of Foreign Relations since 1995. Then you got this guy right here, right, who basically is the chairman of the banking supervision, right? And he's also the director of the Council of Foreign Relations. Then you got this other guy right here who was the chairman of the New York Fed from 2000 to 2004, and was Peter G. Peterson, a white Gentile Knight of Malta with an honorary degree from the Jesuits of Georgetown. The same place where Donald Trump, where his kids were graduated from. They graduated from Georgetown. Then you got the past director for the Federal Reserve of Bank, the New York, Edward L. Hennessy, who was also a Gentile. One thing I understand is that Gentiles are also Canaanites. A Gentile is a Canaanite or Amorite. They're basically the same people. They just have different nomenclature titles. Because I told you, in a processional circle, the lunar cycle of patriarchy was being controlled by the Gentiles, the Canaanites, right? But they lost their power. And since they lost their power, this is why Donald Trump is in office. Because one thing you got to understand is that you seeing the government fight within the government. You have the white hats versus the black hats. That is basically what you're basically seeing right now, right? So you have the American Pope. You got to read this book right here by John Cooney. And he was talking about the Archbishop of New York City is the one who basically controls everything, right? So one thing you got to understand is that the Roman occupational government in 1669, it was originally called, Washington, D.C. was originally called Rome, right, in 1669. So that's how you know that the great majority of any type of politician or president that works within the factions of the militarized groups of Washington, D.C. and the Vatican and things of that nature is still Rome, right? All they do is just change the nomenclature titles, because the Archbishop controls the military, government, and martial law. So this is why the Archbishop, he also works in synergy with Donald Trump. And the reason I say that is because Donald Trump, he converted to Judaism in the year of 2022, right? And this is important to know because eventually he's going to claim himself as the commander in chief and the king of Israel, right? Which is why you see this illustration right here, which is basically a video. You see Donald Trump right here, and he's basically garbed in the garments of red, which basically denotes the fact that he's a Luciferian priest, a Luciferian priest. Anytime that you see ritualistic events and you see a person wearing red all the time, they are basically the Luciferian priests of that denomination, right? I don't want to get too far into the presentation. I think I got a video to show you. So now this is where we get into this video, right? Because one thing, like I said, you're looking at one big club, basically. All these people are under the same principle. They have one goal, and that is a one world government, basically. I'm gonna play the video.
The Jesuits had been preparing Donald J. Trump for 50 years, at least. They brought him to the place of power where the people will follow him. You see, the Jesuits cannot put a military dictator in place unless the people are first made willing to follow him. This is what was done with Stalin. This is what was done with Mao. The two greatest killers. Remember, the big murderers of the 20th century is first.
And the guy who was speaking, he was basically a whistleblower that came from the Pentagon. He was also working within the factions of the CIA and things of that nature.
You see, the Jesuits cannot put a military dictator in place unless the people are first made willing to follow him. This is what was done with Stalin. This is what was done with Mao. The two greatest killers. Remember, the big murderers of the 20th century is first Mao Zedong, put in power in 1949 by Francis Cardinal Spellman through the American State Department, and the betrayal of Chiang Kai-shek. Then you have the USSR, that Stalin was put in power here, and that one of the tutors and overseers of Stalin in the 40s will be Averell Harriman, a knight of Malta and a skull and bonesman and an American, and he was also in the administration of JFK. The wicked Averell Harriman was in Moscow advising Joseph Stalin. And this can also be seen in the great book written by Anthony Sutton titled Skull and Bones, America's Secret Establishment. After the attempted assassination, Trump nearly immediately, within a day or two, appoints his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, James Donald Bowman, pardon me, so he was born James Donald Bowman, 1984, and now he's James David Vance. J.D. Vance. He got his J.D., his law degree, from Yale. And at Yale, he was inducted into Skull and Bones. So J.D. Vance is part of the Skull and Bones secret society and establishment controlled by the Jesuit order. And his wife, Usa, is really tied to the certain High Knights of Malta, certain Pilgrim Society, and other things. So she's most assuredly tied to the network also. Vance and his wife, J.D. and his wife, Usa, are controlled by the Jesuits. And if something happens to Trump where he's killed or he dies, the Jesuits have a perfect stooge, white Scotch-Irish descent, who is now Roman Catholic, who converted to Catholicism, saw him crossing himself at the Trump rally, and his wife, also connected to the Jesuit order. So Trump has chosen exactly who they want him to have. So Trump's a Freemason, you got a Bonesman here, and you're going to have all the secret societies represented. You're going to have CFR people there. And by the way,
so all this stuff is being applied right now, right? All this stuff works in synergy with everything that's taking place with Donald Trump. So when it comes to that whole ideology or whatever about, because something is going to happen to Donald Trump, because the black hats, the deep state shadow government, they don't like the fact that Donald Trump is in office. But it also is applied to the script that's going to be played out. Something may happen. He might, another attempt on his life. He might be unalived. There's a possibility when it comes to that faction, right? Because, like I said, it's one big club. Because you cannot drain the swamp if you're a part of the swamp. Because I told you, he converted to Judaism in 2022. Trump is a part of the swamp as much as anyone, right? His children went to Fordham University, where they were basically trained by Jesuits, right? So one thing you got to understand is that voting is basically a ritual, right? The reason I say that is because the great majority of people on the planet are trapped inside of connotative linguistics, right? Because they don't understand the etymology behind certain factions when it comes to certain verbiage and vocabulary. So when you're basically voting, you're making a vow, a wish, a promise to a god, an unknown god. A god is basically an archonic force that is also acclimated to the infrastructure of their political system when they do these rituals, right? So it's not a coincidence that also this is all being facilitated in a form of premeditation, because presidents are selected, not elected. They already knew this in The Simpsons, right? So now I'm going to show you another video. Because when it comes to, the dynamics of the white hats and the black hats, they're basically, the government is fighting within itself. So when you have a white hat in office, a Republican Party, right? and they having a restoration of the republic because Donald Trump, he's been the president this whole time, right? Because a lot of people don't understand the fact that Obama, he was the last president of democracy, right? He was the last democratic president that you actually had that was a part of the corporate infrastructure of that whole faction or whatever. Because Joe Biden, when he was in office, there wasn't no more corporation, right? Because they wasn't even using the original or the real United States American flag, right? So that's this. We're going to get into that as we get to the presentation. I don't want to spoil it for you. Now, one thing you got to understand: you got the evacuation of all Capitol Hill buildings, and they having a training exercise. They're basically preparing for a Black Swan event. They're preparing for some type of destabilization that's going to be taking place on American soil. So that's why it's imperative to understand that the Black Hats, the deep state shadow government, they're going to try to do everything in their power to basically eradicate this whole process, right? In order to catapult us into a new world order system. So they're doing a training exercise for when a plane hits a military building, right?
Morning. What's going on?
Let's do the test.
Oh,
You also have to be very meticulous. They're going to start doing a lot more tests, these cyber polygon type of trial runs, because we're at the apex of something that's actually going to be happening, taking place pretty soon in the year of 2025. So they got to have these trials, these trainings, these tests, these drills that they're going to be doing on American soil, because a lot of the afflictions that's going to be taking place is going to be happening on American soil.
I'm doing. Morning out there. Good morning. So, out Grove Street. Yeah. So when I woke up this morning and got on X, I saw that the Capitol Police had posted that they were having an evacuation drill this morning. So I'm here so early. He's down there. Damn it, I can't freaking zoom in. I'm so mad. Which is coming down. Um, Which is a little weird because nobody's here. So, but they do have, I got here early enough to take like a ride around just to peek because I wasn't sure exactly where. They didn't give, many details. That's probably to keep me away. But I wasn't sure exactly where or what or anything because it was very vague. It goes in the ambulance. Yeah, there's never move. Um, so I was able to go around the area before they did the road closures. So now they have, they have this road here, right here, East Capitol. They have the pop-up barricades. They've put those up since I've gotten here. And they have straight down there a block, Constitution Avenue. They have that all blocked off. So they have all the pop-up barriers up down there and are diverting traffic. And then they have them also down here on Independence. And since I'm on this side, I can't see how far down that way they have the road blocked off. But over here, it's about a block and a half up to the left where they have the last pop-up barriers. So I don't know. Really weird, like an evacuation drill and nobody's here. Can you hear that alarm in the background?
So they doing all these evacuation programs, right? That's important to understand, and that's important to see because we in that time right now to where this is actually going to be demonstrated over time. We don't know how it's going to happen. It could be a great solar flash. It could be some type of event. Because one thing you got to understand about Donald Trump, he still has qualified immunity under the continuity of government, meaning that he basically controls the military through FEMA, which is why he signed the National Declaration of Emergency Act, to where if something happens, some type of catastrophic event happens or whatever, this is where the military can basically take over under a totalitarian control, which is why, like I said, Donald Trump is a wartime president, right? You cannot have a cybernetic dictatorship until you have a wartime president in office, right? So something's going to be taking place to where something like this can actually demonstrate, where you have over 6 billion or billions of people unalived in 2025, which is the year of the cosmic serpent. Because also one thing you got to understand about Donald Trump is actually a double agent. He's playing both sides, and the reason I say he's basically playing both sides is because he is also creating the restoration of the republic for a certain demographic of people to have a form of liberation, and he's also creating a totalitarian control and a dystopia for those who want to be under servitude, right? So when it comes to this new world order system, you got two different doors you want to go through. You're gonna go through the door of servitude, to where you're gonna be controlled by the communistic agenda under a new world order system that's going to be controlled by Donald Trump. But he's also giving you the ability to go through the door of liberation, the restoration of the republic, right? Because they have to give you the ability to basically choose a side, right? Now, and I told you, Donald Trump is a wartime president. So when you go to the transliteration of the Book of Revelation, Els Holy and Jill, written by Dr. Malachi Z. York, he talks about how there's going to be a form of World War III that's going to be taking place, right? The USA, Americans, inhabitants have never experienced degradation and loss of a war as European nations have felt, because the restoration of the republic is basically the eradication process of the European colonial operations, right? Also, when you go to Els Holy and Jill, he talks about how Babylon, the United States of America, be found in blood of the prophets who were persecuted for doing the work of the Most High, and the holy ones, and the 144,000 will be raised from all parts of the earth, right? So also during this time of desolation, there's a spiritual component with it. You're going to see certain individuals raising up. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. The meek shall inherit the earth under the restoration of the republic, which is a form of spiritual liberation, right? So this is why Donald Trump is talking about my fellow Americans. The storm is upon us. That storm is an influx of a flooding of information, a flooding of truth, a flooding of knowledge that basically destabilizes everything within the infrastructure of third density, right? So that means that it's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be taking place in the year 2025. So this is the reason why I said on my Twitter page, everybody go follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is _BDale1014. It says right here verbatim, pay attention to the patterns. The deep state, Democrats, and liberals are going to sabotage Trump's presidency with another, you know what, like they did in 2020. So it's about to get interesting, right? And the reason I say that is because, like I said, the restoration of the republic is a form of liberation. The black hats don't want the liberation being facilitated by the indigenous people. So now this is where we get into the constitution of the indigenous people that is facilitated by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? That is also applied to a form of self-determination, self-governance, to where you have a autonomous infrastructure that is basically detached from the United Nations Corporation, right? So also when you look at the drafted Declaration of the Indigenous People, we have the right to a nationality. So you have the ability to be a sovereign body only if you own land. This is why I said don't ask for the reparations, ask for the land back, because when you get the land, it makes you sovereign. When you're sovereign, you're basically not applied to the New World Order system that's going to be applied by Donald Trump and his factions. Now, one thing you understand is that, like I said, Obama was technically the last president of the corporation. And the reason I say a corporation is because when you look at the Universal Declaration or the Uniform Commercial Code, Title 18, Section 3002, page 86, third paragraph, it tells you that the United States is a corporation. The United States right now is no longer a corporation because of being facilitated by a republic. Now, the demo system of democracy is applied to the Democrats, the deep state shadow government. So that means that Obama was the last president of the corporation, which is why he signed the Indigenous People Act, and he also showed us a real American flag. So this right here basically shows you and demonstrates the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples background, which was signed by President Obama. When you look at my cursor right here, when you look at the body of the context right here, he signed the Declaration of Independence because he had to, right? There is no more corporation. The corporation, as I was telling you, was being controlled by the lunar cycle under patriarchy, right? Now we in a sun cycle. Matriarch is being facilitated by a republic, right? So a republic denotes the fact that there is no more corporation that was being controlled by the three city states of Vatican, London, and Washington, D.C., right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give a brief synopsis about everything that I was talking about in this video, because we in a time right now, we have to understand how the socio-political aspect of civics is also applied to spiritual reparations, spiritual atonement, spiritual economics. Everything is being revitalized right now. Everything is going through a form of metamorphosis. So that basically means that we're on a different timeline. We are on a different timeline because we're no longer a corporation. So that means that we're no longer under servitude. Now, like I said, there's a delineation between liberation and those who want to be subjugated under servitude under the New World Order system. You have a side to choose. as we're going through this new timeline. Now, like I said, you cannot have a totalitarian dictatorship until you have a military dictator in office. So this is why the Council of Foreign Relations, the Committee of 300, they've been preparing for Donald Trump for the last 50 years, right? So this is why Dr. Malachi Z. York, he knew about that edification in the early 2000s, which is why he put it in his publication, Leviathan, the Beast as an Antichrist. And you look at the bottom of the illustration, he looks just like Donald Trump, right? Not a coincidence. So it's time to eradicate the whole process of the illusionary dynamics and the semantics that's being played when it comes to politics. So this is why Elon Musk, he tweeted Novus Order Seclorum, New World Order, because the New World Order is going to be controlled by artificial intelligence, right? A cybernetic dictatorship that has a universal based income, right? Which is why you see Donald Trump politicking with Elon Musk, right? So what you're seeing right now, these are the people who really control the whole infrastructure of the political system. When you're talking about the Archbishop of New York, right? Who controls both parties, right? Who controls the militarized government under the United Nations, right? Donald Trump is going to claim himself to be the commander in chief, and he's going to claim himself to be the king of Israel because he converted to Judaism in 2022, right? So everything that you seen took place was basically a ritual, right? Everything that you seen took place was basically a ritual that took place. So now, we have to understand everything intuitively to the point we have to understand that the restoration of the Republic basically eradicates the European operational colonial powers. So back to this chart that I created, the precessional circle of the equinox. As I was telling you guys before, it's going to be two different dynamics. We either going to have an election, and if we do have an elect, it means that, my bad, it's either we're not going to have an election or we're going to have an election. And if we do have one, it's going to be Donald Trump in office. And I basically based it on the precessional circle of the equinox, right? Because a sun cycle is galvanized by a matriarch, and a matriarch is galvanized by a republic. That's Donald Trump. So the restoration of the republic is actually applied to the indigenous people, which is why I said that Obama was the last corporate president of the Uniform Commercial Codes that is applied to draconian law. He was the last president under the lunar cycle, under the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces was the age of illusion. The age of illusion was under corporate internal codes, canon laws, ecclesiastical law. Everything that basically took you out of your sovereign capacity was under the two lunar cycles of the age of Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. So now we're going back to the true light, the age of Aquarius. So that's why it's imperative to understand that Donald Trump, like I said, he's a double agent. He's also restoring the republic for the indigenous people. And for those who are basically want to be connected to the system, he is creating a form of servitude for that dynamic of people. So all this is happening because we're going through reset. And when we go through reset, this is where you get a terraforming process of everything on the planet. So expect black swan events. There's going to be many different covert operations that's going to be taking place on American soil, right? So don't be surprised if the deep state shadow government create a some type of affliction that basically eradicates this whole presidency, basically, right? To where we have to shut down the planet again because of, they got to hit us with another draconian juice and keep us in the house and things of that nature. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. And, if you're new to this channel, subscribe to the channel. Stop being a monitoring spirit. If it's about 50 to 60% of the people who watch this channel is not subscribed. Subscribe to the channel and get this edification out there.